So the topic of my talk tonight will be about acoustic communication in animals. So first, let's start with this short video. So actually, the sound you just heard was played back by a loudspeaker. And just after, what do we have? We have the behavioral answer, the vocal answer by the hippos. So that's the way bioacousticians, investigate the acoustic communication systems of animals. We are able to ask questions to animals. And for instance, this big male, this big hippo went out of the water after a playback and is really not happy. So you see it's a territorial male, so it's marking his territory just after the playback. And with this playback, we were able to show that the hippos are able to recognize a familiar individual, a neighbor, which is from another group, but still on the same lake, and a stranger individual, which has never been in the area, just using their voice. Okay, so that's the basic, actually, the basic goal of bioacousticians is to understand how animals communicate by sounds. Okay, so there is a bunch of different animals that communicate by sounds. Not all animals, because you have to be able to produce sounds, you have to have a vocal organ or something that makes you able to stridulate, to produce some sound vibration. When we study an acoustic communication process, we always have this this chain of information in mind. Actually, in each communication, you have an emitter, and the job of the emitter is to code an information into an acoustic signal. Then the acoustic signal will transmit through the environment to the receiver, and the job of the receiver is to decode the information that is embedded in the vocalization. To well understand this, I will take one example we studied some years ago, which is this little warbler, which is from the Atlantic forest in Brazil, so in South America. And this white-billed warbler is a territorial bird. So the male defends their territory, and to defend their territory, they sing. They use a lot their song. And their song is like this. So it's a very simple song. It's a succession of notes, and these notes, they decrease in frequency, okay? They are less and less high-pitched with time. And so we decided to work with this animal because the song is quite simple, and we say, okay, with this song, we have the possibility to really isolate, to really decipher which kind of information is encoded in the song. The main issue that this bird faces is sound propagation constraints, because as I told you, the males, they defend territories. So the song has to travel through the forest, and after 100 meters of propagation, you have only that. Only this is remaining. So you have lost the first half of the song. Why? Because it's the most high-pitched, and the high-pitched songs, their energy is absorbed very quickly by the vegetation. And so there is only this, second half of the song which remains. So we say, okay, which kind of information can be transmitted through this sound, and how the bird deals with this problem of degradation, of sound degradation during transmission. One first and very important information that is very often coded in animal signal, it's the identity of the species. Most of you are able to recognize a certain number of bird species just by hearing their song. It's because their song is species specific. The blackbird has its own song, the robin has another song, etc., etc. So with the example of the white-billed warbler, we had no idea at the beginning how this species identity information was coded. So we recorded a bunch of different males And we found that the common point of all these males is this slow frequency modulation, frequency slope on which the notes are, you know, so like this. So say, okay, maybe this is in this slow frequency modulation that the information, I am a whiteboard warbler, is coded. What we did first, so we used to do that, we take the natural signal and then we modify it to test the hypothesis. If the hypothesis is, the hypothesis was, it's the slow frequency slope which supports the information. So let's, by putting dots at one dot. So it's still the song of a whiteboard warbler, but then the notes are at random. So there's no more, you know, this regularity. If you play back, if you put a loudspeaker on the center of the territory of this, of a whiteboard warbler, and then you play back this song, you obtain no territorial reaction. If you play back a control song, it does mean a song that you have that has been recorded from another whiteboard warbler a few kilometers ago, then the owner of the territory will attack, literally attack your loudspeaker. It comes and sings and is very excited, etc., etc. But when you play this song where all the notes have been put at random, no more reaction. You can say, okay, but this is a very rough modification of the song, and that's true. So let's do another modification, which is, you know, less strong, just by increasing a little bit. You play back this signal to a whiteboard warbler, it does not react. And you can do the reverse. So just by increasing the result, you kill, actually, you suppress the information about the identity of the species. So the whiteboard warbler is extremely sensitive to this slope of frequency, and it's this acoustic feature which support the identity of the species. And we check this with a pure synthetic signal. This is a pure tone, entirely coming from my computer, okay? But it respects one thing, the frequency slope of the whiteboard warbler song. There's no more notes, there's no more, you know, slight frequency modulation inside. It's just this general slope. When you play back, when we played back this signal from our loudspeaker in the center of the territory of whiteboard warblers, our loudspeaker was attacked by the bird. So it does mean that in this very, very simple signal, we have the information, I am a whiteboard warbler, you know. It does not mean that the bird is not able to make the difference between this synthetic signal and a normal song. Of course, you know, birds are experts in sounds. But on the first trial, he gets it. This is a whiteboard warbler. After several trials, then you will have habituation, and it will classify, the bird will classify this sound as, you know, non-biologically relevant. But on the first trial, it will attack the loudspeaker. And the last signal that we tried is this one. In this one, there's only the second part of the signal. You remember, is this part which remains after a long range propagation. And when we played back this song, we also had a territorial response, which is totally logical, actually, because the frequency modulation, the slope of the frequency modulation is still here in the second part. And the bird does not need to hear the whole song to be able to catch that it's a whiteboard warbler which is singing. Okay, so to put it in a nutshell, for this first information, the identity of the species, I am a whiteboard warbler, it's the slow frequency modulation that codes for this information. And this information is resistant to propagation constraints. It can propagate at long range. It's a kind of public information, okay? And many birds will be able to decode this information. A second information that is really frequent in the vocalizations of animal, it's information about the individual. I am Jack, I am Paul, etc. In your voice, you know, you have information about you as an individual. We are able to recognize tons of people just by their voice, their voices. So is there any kind of coding of individual identity in the song of the wild-word warbler? To test that, we recorded several males several times, and we first compared between their song. Here you have two songs from two different males. At first glance, is the same one, okay? You have the general shape of the song of the wild-word warbler. But if you have a precise look, then if we zoom on some part of the song, we'll see that there are some irregularities in this frequency slope. And the interesting thing is that if you record, let's say, Peter on the left 30 times, on the 30 songs of Peter, you will have the same irregularity at exactly the same position. So there is an individual signature in the song of each of the birds. But do the birds use it to recognize their neighbors, for instance? To know that, you have to ask them the question, you know. So to ask the question, we set up an experiment. It was a little bit more difficult than the first one, but we had to put the loudspeaker at the border of two territories. And then we played back the song of one neighbor to the other neighbor, okay? Normally, when two neighbors are singing, they don't attack each other all the time. You know, it's too tiring. So it's what is called the deer enemy effect. When you hear your neighbors singing, you just don't care. It's normal. They are on their territory. There is no specific threat. So we put this loudspeaker at the border of the two territories, and we play back the song of the neighbor to the tested bird. No specific reaction. Everything's normal. The neighbor is singing. And then what we did, we modified through our computer the song of the neighbor. You see those two notes. I took specifically a song which is a little bit caricatural because there is a big frequency gap between two notes. You see those two notes that are in the red square. We took them and we made them a little bit higher pitched. Does mean that we modified the position of the irregularity of the song in Peter's song. And that's the only modification that we did. But when we played back this signal at the border of the territory of the tested bird, which neighbor was Peter, he reacted as it would have been a stranger voice. And we checked that, of course. So actually, we changed the individual identity of the bird just by doing this small modification of the song. And that this does mean that those tiny irregularities in the frequency slope, these are the way the birds code for their individuality. And the interesting thing is that those irregularities, they are mostly present in the first part of the song, which is the part that disappears at long range. It does mean that this information about the individuality, I'm Peter, I'm Jack, is kind of a private information because it's only for the birds that are close to the sending bird. Okay, so you get this idea of a communication network where animals can send signal. In this signal, you can have different types of information coded. Some information can transmit at long range, other information at short range, depending on which acoustic features they are coded. Right? Clear? Perfect. Okay. Okay, and this coding strategy is adapted to environmental constraint, actually, to this tropical forest. You know, I'm speaking under the control of Darwin, so I'm very impressed. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what is a vocal repertoire and what is a dynamic information. And for that, we are going to move to another animal, another example that we also study in my lab, which is this. So here, this is a playback experiment we did in the Pantanal in Brazil on this Yacare caiman, which is a crocodilian, obviously. And the loudspeaker is emitting distress calls that we recorded from nestlings, from young juveniles. And you see the reaction of the mother. She's attracted to this course. She really wants to defend her young. So what did we choose to study crocodiles in my lab? It's a long story, but I will make it short. Crocodilians actually are animals that are very close to birds. We are all cousins on this earth, but birds and crocodiles are very close cousins. And this is visible in different aspects of their biology and anatomy. Here you have the brain of a crocodile is actually a bird brain, a little bit elongated. Okay, and you have some similarities in their parental behavior, because as you probably know, crocodilians lay eggs, but the parents, mostly the mothers. In most species, it's the mothers, but in some crocodilian species, it's the fathers that do that. The parent take care of the nest, so they attend the nest during the 3 months, before the eggs hatch, to defend the nest. And after, at the moment of hatching, the small nestlings, when they get out of the eggs, they will call like this. And the mother will react by digging the nest. I will show you that in a moment. And after hatching, the parent will take the young to the river or to the lake and will stay with them for a while and will defend them from predators' attacks or things like that. You will hear plenty of them. Okay, so the first thing that we did something very simple. It's very tricky to work with crocodiles, so we always do quite simple things. And the first very simple things that we did was to record mature eggs, so eggs that were about to hatch. We just shake a little bit those eggs, and then we got those recordings, and then we played back those hatching calls in a first experiment to mature eggs, and in a second experiment, which was a little bit more tricky, to adult females. So for the eggs, this is a video showing the result. If it's no, it won't work. Okay, little technical issue, but yeah, no matter. So when you play back a hatching call to a mature egg of a crocodile, the mature egg hatches. Does mean that the mature embryo that is in the egg, it responds by vocalizing and it gets out of the nest. So the effect of the hatching calls is to synchronize actually the hatching process within the nest. But the second role of those hatching calls is to trigger the maternal behavior. Here we bury the loudspeaker in the sand at the place where normally the eggs are, in the nest. And you see, the video is not very good, but you see the females is digging in response to those hatching calls. Okay, so if we summarize the situation, we have hatching calls that are emitted by mature embryos, and those hatching calls, they are useful to synchronize the hatching of, the several dozens of eggs that are in the nest. And they are also useful to trigger the first response of the mother that will help the young to get out of the nest. Then, as I told you, usually the female, but sometimes the males, in the gharial, for instance, is the males that do that. They bring the young to the river or to the lake, and they will take care of them. And we wanted to investigate a little bit the acoustic communication that are between the parents, that exists between the parents and the young. To do that, we went to a nice place. It was not possible to do this in captivity. In captivity, when you go to zoo where there are crocodiles, they are so packed that the young, they are eaten by the big adults, etc. So it's not possible. So we had to go to the fields, and we went to Guyana in South America on the river Rupununi. And then there on this river, you have a big crocodilian, which is the black caiman. Black caiman, at the adult age, the maximum body size can be 5 meters, something quite enormous. And when we were there, it was the reproductive season, and all the females were with their young. So once again, we did something quite simple. We recorded the young in two different situations. The first situation, we put a recorder, a mic with a recorder, just near groups of young that were near the shore. And we let them, we let the recorder on the mic. And the young, they used to call quite often a vocalization that we called the contact call. And then we recorded the same juveniles in another situation, mimicking a predator attack. It was a gentle predator attack because, of course, we just, shake a little bit the young. They were not, but they were stressed. And we recorded the call they emitted during this in this situation. To give you an idea of what we did, it's in another place, but it's in another place, but it's the same kind of manipulation. So you see the females react a lot to those distress calls. They really want to defend their young. Then we did a bunch of acoustic analysis, and we found that it's very easy from an acoustical point of view to distinguish between contact calls and distress calls. Contact calls, they are like this, and distress calls are more like that. So you have more energy in the high frequency, it's a little, more high pitch, and also the slope of the frequency modulation is more pronounced, like this. Okay, and then we did also playback experiment. And to give you an idea, this is another experiment we did in a zoo, but it gives you an idea of the behavioral reaction that those playback can trigger. Okay, so the camera is just on the top of the loudspeaker, and you see they are really attracted to those distress calls. Okay, to put it in a nutshell, what did we get when we were in Guyana testing those two different calls with the black caiman? Actually, when we played back contact calls from a loudspeaker set up on the shore, the mothers, which were always in the river, they did not move. That's totally logical. The young, they are used to emit contact calls all the time. So a little bit more contact calls coming from a loudspeaker, it's nothing abnormal. The young, the juveniles, they were attracted by the loudspeaker and they gathered around the loudspeaker. So it's clearly a call that, attracts and to keep the young together. When we play back the distress calls, we obtain totally different reaction. The young, they freeze. The juveniles, they freeze, just vocalizing a bit, but they did not approach the loudspeaker. The mother showed the kind of reaction you just showed. She went to the loudspeaker, bellowing like this towards the loudspeaker. Okay. So this is not a very complicated vocal repertoire, but this is a vocal repertoire. This means that the young crocodilians, they have several possibilities to code different types of information and to target different receivers using different types of signal. And we have here what we call a dynamic information, because actually the juveniles, they can go, their call can go from a pure contact call to a pure distress call, and they can, like a cursor, they can modify their call, indicating to their siblings and to the mother which is their current level of stress. Okay. Quick question: how do static, so information about the signature, who you are, and dynamic information, more related to the condition related, interact? And just I won't spend much time on this study, but it's a very recent study we just published in PNAS last year about puppy whites. We had a PhD student studying vocal communication between puppies and their mother. And here, this is a typical playback experiment that we did. You see the loudspeaker, it's this black something on the left, and it is the loudspeaker which is emitting the sound. Of course, we put the loudspeaker in this black sock you know, to mimic kind of the shape of a puppy. You see the power of the sound, because there's no other, there's nothing. It's just sound that triggers the behavior of the mother. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult because it's a little bit more heavy than a puppy, but she will manage to do it. Okay. Okay, so using this kind of experiment, we were able to ask tons of questions to those dog mothers, and we also did many sound analysis. I won't go into the details, but to put it in a nutshell, we found that there is individual signature in the whines of the puppies. There is also a litter signature. So and we demonstrated through playback experiment that the mothers, they know if the whine comes from a puppy from their own litter or from another one. And there is also information about the condition of the puppy. If the puppy is big or if it's smaller and would need more, you know, to be more fed. And the mother, she really adapts, she modifies her response to the sound she hears, depending on the information that is coded in the song. If it's a vocalization, if it's a whine that comes from a puppy that is not from her litter, she just she doesn't care. But if it's one that comes from her litter, then she will pay attention, and then she will also pay attention to the condition related information. Okay, I will skip this just to spare a little bit. Okay. Now, I don't have all the slides, but just maybe I would, I don't have the time to speak, so maybe I will skip, I will go just to that because it's more interesting. So when vocalizations help to navigate in a social group, and this is another animal we are working with. This is a big one, it's the northern elephant seal. So obviously we are working with this animal in the field, we cannot have him in the lab, and we are working on this animal because the acoustic communication is really important for them. You know, those elephant seals, they are marine mammals, so they spend most of the time in the sea, but at the breeding season, they come to the beaches of California and Mexico to reproduce. And they stay there for a while because they arrive in November and they stay until mid-February. Okay, and during this time, they don't eat, they don't drink, so it's a harsh time for them. The males, for instance, they can lose 30% of their weight during this time. And the males, they fight for the females. But, you know, if they would fight always physically, they can hurt them, they can kill them. It's a very dangerous behavior. So actually what they do, they use their vocalization to interact, and the vocalization help them to avoid most of the physical conflict they would have. How do they do? Actually, in the voice of those elephant seals, you will hear some just after, there is an individual vocal signature. It does mean that each male has its own voice, okay? And what we did playback experiment to ask males, are you able to recognize the other males that are who are on the beach? To do that, you have to imagine the situation. So you arrive in November, there's plenty of males on the beach. And so the first thing that you have to do is to mark them, okay? To know who is who, to record each of the males, to know who is who. And then you have also, during several weeks, you have to observe their behavior, to know the social hierarchy, to know who is the strongest, who is the weakest, etc. To know everything about the social network. Once you have this social network, which is quite stable, actually, you know who is who in the group, then you can do this experiment that we did. The experiment consists in choosing male that has an intermediate position in the hierarchy. And then this male, we will play back the voice of a dominant rival. Okay, and we will see his reaction. And a few days later, we will play back to the same male the voice of a subordinate male. And we will compare between the two reactions to the two playbacks. And of course, we are scientists, so we have to repeat this experiment several times. It's just to explain you that it takes a lot of time to do this kind of experiments. Okay, so I summarize in two videos. First one, the playback is the dominant rival. So you have the loudspeaker on the right, the tested male on the left, no other animal around. The sound you hear comes from the loudspeaker. Look, the reaction. Keep in mind that this male does not eat, does not drink. You know, it takes a lot of energy to move, etc., etc. Clearly, he's afraid of the voice. Okay, so he flees away from the loudspeaker. The very distance. And I insist, it's only the vocalization that you know you see. There's no animal behind the loudspeaker. Okay, now same male, exactly the same individual. A few days later, the loudspeaker is on the right also, the black box over there. And look, this video is extremely interesting. At the beginning, it's a little bit boring because we are playing back the voice of a subordinate. So this male does not care. It's a subordinate one. But after a while, he's becoming nervous. And you will see that he will approach the loudspeaker. He wants to attack the subordinate. Yeah, that's the beginning of it. Yeah, you see an Ecole. Then look, there is another male, you know, far away. Look at the behavior of this other male far away. Because the tested male thinks that the sound comes from the other male. Of course, it does not realize that the sound comes from the loudspeaker. The other male reacts by vocalizing. And look, the little problem is that this other male is a dominant one. So he said, okay, I made a mistake. I have to retreat. Okay. So I love this video because it really gives you a good view of how those animals, you know, navigate in their social system just using their vocalization. And they do this all the time. We, of course, we did plenty of study on the elephant seals, and what we showed, for instance, you heard we showed that the rhythm of the calls are very important. You heard the calls of the elephant seals is something like clack, 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 clack. And actually, this rhythm is extremely important. This is the individual signature. We tested using playback experiment the males with signals where we modified this rhythm, and we observed that if we modify the rhythm, they are no more able to recognize an individual. It's extremely important for them. Okay. Another thing which is, I think, quite interesting is we did a study a few years ago where we compared the vocalizations of elephant seals depending on their age. So we recorded young one. That's another question. We don't know really why young individuals come to the beach because they won't have access to female. But maybe, you know, it's to get an idea progressively of how things are going on the colony. But yeah, so we recorded the voices of several males, young males. And what we observed, it's the drawing on the bottom of the picture. It's an acoustic, what we call an acoustic space. And it shows that actually most of the individuals, you cannot distinguish them through their voices because their voices is not individualized, except one which had, you know, a very special voice. The others, it was not possible to tell, hey, that's Jack or Peter, etc. And this individual signature came later when they become adults. And the interesting thing is that the drawing that is, you know, on the top, it's what we call the social network. Each dot is one individual, and the links between the individuals, it's the individuals that shows the interaction that we observe between the individuals. And you see, there are not so many links between the individuals, especially if you compare with the social network of adults, you know, which obviously is far more complicated. And in adults, you have individual signatures that are very, very well defined. So actually, you have a correspondence, you have a fit between the very well stabilized individual signature and a complex social network in which you have to navigate using your vocalizations. Good. Now, yeah, that's an interesting example. Inaudible signals. You know, we humans, we hear between 100 hertz, 200 hertz, and 20,000 hertz. That's all. And 20,000, me, I know more here. And in the room, probably there's only a few people, you know, hearing up to 20,000 hertz. Okay, so actually we miss a lot of animal vocalizations because many animals vocalize outside this range. For instance, we are in my lab, we are studying this African striped mouse, which is really cute first and very interesting. Far more interesting than the laboratory mouse, of course, but because it's a wild animal and because of other reasons. The first reason is that it's a mouse that has a cooperative life. It's a cooperative breeder. It does mean that they make kind of nest, big nest in bush. And in this nest, you have a family of mice. So the mother, the father, the young, but also the young that are already a little bit old, etc., etc. And all these animals, they help each other to raise the newborns. So it's an example of a cooperative breeder. We humans, we are cooperative breeder. You know, it's far more easy to breed a baby when you are, you know, tons of persons involved in it. And this mice is a cooperative breeder. So, so that's the first thing. The second thing, it's a territorial animal. Does mean that those families, they have territories. And it looks like that. You know, so obviously they are from Africa. They live mainly in Austral Africa, in this kind of environment that you see is the Karoo. I don't know if you have ever been there. It's near the border of Namibia. And you see those bushes, it's the bushes where the mice make their nest. And their territory, you have below, you have a map of those territories. You see that they overlap just a little bit, but each family has its own territory. And so we are very interested in deciphering the acoustic communication network in those mice. First, so we have them at the lab and we also study them in the wild. When you record those mice and you just play back the sound, you cannot hear anything because it's ultrasound. Now, if I decrease, and it's one of my students, Leo, who did that for you, if we decrease the frequency of the sound, we lower the frequency of the sound, then exactly the same video, we can hear something, hopefully. It's still high pitched, but okay? It's the song of a mouse, okay? And they do that all the time when they are together. When they are alone, after 5 or 10 minutes, they stop. So it's clearly a communication signal. Actually, my student Leo spent 2 years analyzing the vocal repertoire of this mouse, and he found a bunch of different calls. For instance, the flat one. The long down. And another one, which is very, very special, that is probably emitted by males during courtship, the trill. Probably is the first time you heard a mouse. So, of course, all those signals, we decrease the frequency and we even slow down the speed because it's extremely fast. Very high pitched. Okay? The problem with ultrasound is that they propagate at very short distance. When you use infrasound, very low pitch vocalization like elephants, you can communicate, you can send your signal over maybe 1 kilometer without any problem. When you are a bird, you are vocalizing, you know, at medium frequency, around 8,000 kilohertz, 6,000 kilohertz. Those sounds, they propagate at quite a long range. But when you use ultrasounds, the active space of these ultrasounds, it's maximum 2 meters, 1 meter, 1.5 meters. After that, all the energy of the signal has been absorbed by the atmosphere. Okay, so how can this mouse, which has quite big territories, defend the territories and interact with their neighbors with this signal that propagates so badly? So that's the question we are interested in. The first thing that we did, I won't go into details, but the first thing that we did, we checked that there is some information about the identity of those mice. And of course there are. So actually the calls that come from one nest are different from the calls that come from another nest. And then we did playback experiment to test that they use those signatures. Doing playback experiment with this animal, it's a totally different thing than doing playback experiment with the elephant seal, of course, but it's the same, you know, principle. You have to have a loudspeaker, and you see the yellow gray thing. It's an ultrasound loudspeaker, which we put it just in front of the nest where the mice have their nest, because on the morning they get out of the nest and they spend 45 minutes, you know, just under the first sunshine and just to warm up. And here you have maybe 10, 20 mice vocalizing and interacting each other. You have an ultrasound microphone also and a GoPro to film everything, okay? And here we are at maybe 15 meters, controlling everything from our, you know, sitting in a chair and with the computer on the table, which is kind of nice wild field lab. Okay, and 2 videos. The first one, it's a playback of a stranger individual. So a mouse that we recorded in our lab. So obviously those mice that live in South Africa, they never heard our mice. And look, the type of behavioral reaction they have. So the playback now took, and immediately she went in the bush. Okay, you want it again because it's quick. The red dot, it's when the playback is emitted, so the ultrasound appears. Choke, okay, immediate reaction. So it's a stranger, wow, what happens? And I go back to my nest. Now a second experiment. It will be a neighbor or familiar individual. And of course, the behavior will be totally different. Look, so now it looks at the loudspeaker, say, okay, who is coming? Okay, so we were able, using this tool, because it's an experimental tool, to go, there is an echo appearing. Okay. So to put it in a nutshell, what we did also, we put recorders everywhere on the territories of mice to check where and which kind of acoustic signals they use. And what we found that depending on where they are vocalizing, they don't use the same vocalization. And when they are vocalizing at the border, in a bush, which is at the border of their territory, probably they meet some neighbors there, and they emit this specific vocalization, which is the down. And the interesting thing is that when we played back the song of a neighbor, the tested mice, they emitted this kind of vocalization. So yeah, that's the only kind of story, the only story that I'm able for the moment to talk about mice, because it's work in progress, but you see that this is a very interesting world, this ultrasound. Okay, I'm almost done, I have to. So it's just to tell you that there's plenty of other bioacoustics topics that are extremely interesting. First, I could have tell you about vocal learning in birds, and you know that songbirds, they have to learn their song from a tutor. I could have talked also about referential communication in the vervet monkey. You know that some primates like this one, they use specific words to target, to tell that this type or this other type of predator arrived, etc., etc. Okay. And I mean, and that's it. So I have to go to the conclusion, because I had, of course, tons of other slides. So I don't know how I go there. Okay. That will be for another day. Okay, so I have to go to the conclusion. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. So the take-home messages are animal vocalizations are informative signals. That's very important to realize, that vocalizations, they are not pure reflex that do not mean anything. They really support information transfer. The information, we love to classify it. So we classified it in between static information and dynamic information. Of course, it can be more mixed, and playback is a tool to get into the acoustic communication of animals, and bioacoustics is amazing. And thank you very much.